And welcome to the Ask More Questions podcast. Today I have with me Brian Braddock. How are you doing today? I think it's a nice day. It's a Sunday. It's a little humid here in Kansas City, but overall not too bad. How's it in your neck of the woods?
Well, hi, Gene. Um, Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while since we set it up a few weeks
yeah.
ago. The day here, it's great. It's a great
Mm,
day. I'm here in Chicago. I'm actually at the office today. I kind of fell behind in my work, so
mm,
I'm stuck indoors at my desk,
yeah,
looking outside, wishing I was out in it.
mm,
But
yeah, yeah.
other than that, it's a nice day.
I love Chicago, but man, I don't understand the hot dog thing because, I was there in April and went out because we did the little boat tour, me and some
Mhm.
guys, and then we were, one of the things one of the tour guys said was like, oh, he said that the best place to get a hot dog was some Home Depot or something, and I was like, well, that's interesting. And then he's like, but second best is some other place. And we found it was not too far away, and we walked to it, and I go and I get a hot dog, and I'm like, why the hell does this have a pickle on it? I was so confused, and this is just a Chicago thing to throw a pickle on your hot dog, and I can't say I'm a fan. So
I come to love them. I
okay,
guess full disclosure, unless someone from Chicago hears me say something that's totally not Chicago to say, I moved here a year ago
yeah, you're
from Florida.
transplant, so yeah,
Yeah, I'm a
yeah.
transplant. So,
Hmm.
but I've come to love the hot dog
Okay.
here. I didn't like it at first. I thought it was weird too. I thought the
Okay.
pickle was weird. I
Maybe
didn't
I'm
get
being,
understand.
yeah, you're highlighting maybe my own prejudice, and that I need to give it another shot.
Don't be so judgmental.
I'm sorry, I can't help it. It's my Baptist upbringing. So speaking of which, uh, yeah, we talked a little bit about how you're a former pastor,
That's
and
right.
you have kind of run the gamut on a handful of denominations throughout your life. So
It's
I don't
true.
know. We might as well just go back to the beginning whenever you remember belief taking hold in your life, and we'll just work our way, forward.
Okay. Well, let's see how efficiently I could do this. So my first introduction to belief would have come before I could remember it. My mom was Roman Catholic, uh, Italian family, Roman Catholic.
Hmm.
Catholicism goes hand in hand with that, as with a lot of, I guess, European or that kind of culture. But anyway, so raised up in the Catholic Church as a boy, which was a weird thing to be in rural North Florida, actually. There was the smallest church in the county was the Catholic Church, and it was a small wooden building. It was the Baptist churches that had the big brick um,
Yeah.
edifices. But so I was raised in that. I was an altar boy. Um, so I remember some of the training coming up, but I was the second kid. My older sister was just stellar, star, everything. So they kind of dropped out of the Catholic uh, tradition for the most part after she went through confirmation. I guess they weren't too concerned that I got confirmed, but they did. I was there long enough to be an altar boy, but I didn't get confirmed. Fast forward, oh, I don't know, I was around 13, group of friends, there probably was a girlfriend involved, uh, invited me to their Methodist church where there was this, what do they call, they called it a revival. Back in that
Oh,
stage of my life, I had no idea what that was. I was Catholic.
yeah. What a
So
revival was.
yeah,
Yeah.
it,
I didn't
it
know
was just,
Methodist did revivals. The Baptist, it was pretty common to have a revival every year or two. And for the
yeah,
listener who doesn't know what a revival is when the church just says we're going to have a revival, and it's not, it's manufactured, and it is usually like a week long of evening services where you go and looking back on it, I don't know what the outcome was supposed to be. Um, Renewed
I,
godliness or something. That's my best. guess.
Ultimately, it was to get you to renew and your commitment, and along with that, your tithe, I think.
Well,
If I'm being
yeah,
fully cynical here, completely
that's
cynical.
fine. I mean, as much as easy it is to dog on churches and be like, well, tax free. The reality of it is that that every organization runs on money, and
Hmm.
the church is no exception. And so,
Yes.
and honestly, not everybody tithes 10%. You and I both know that. So, I mean,
Oh, I know that well.
there's probably a
Yeah.
lot of people that don't tithe at all, and then the ones that do tithe, some of them tithe 10, some of them tithe more than that, and then like me, I got to the point where I settled in at a 5% because I was like, well, taxes and stuff, they're doing things that I consider they're doing things that the church isn't doing, so I'm gonna split the difference, and that's how I justified it in my mind anyway. So, but anyway, I digress.
That is a whole different, that is a whole discussion in and of itself that I would
Hmm.
love to have.
Yeah.
I have lots of feelings and thoughts about that. But just to pick up the thread, yeah, that was where I was exposed to a gospel message for the first time, an yeah, evangelical
Yeah.
gospel message. And to be honest with you, I don't remember a thing this guy said. Uh, all I remember is who he was. He was this big, burly ex-convict speaking, spitting, sputtering from the pulpit in this little
Hmm.
Methodist church. And for some reason, it got to me on a very emotional level. Um, and at the end, they do this altar call, right? You're familiar
Hmm.
with that? I
No,
don't know
I'm
if you,
very familiar with that. Yes, yeah.
yeah, at the end.
We had padded altars, but would have preferred something on the floor personally. But you know,
Oh,
bad
yeah,
news. Uh,
yeah. Well, when you're 13, it didn't hurt my
yeah, you're
knees.
fine, right? Yeah, it's different when you're 13.
So, and I really don't, I was not familiar with this. This really wasn't something I knew what to do, a situation I was comfortable with. I knew what to do. Well, it was my first one. But for some reason, I said, yeah, it was a very compelling call. I came forward. I got on my knees. I was crying. I remember that. They said, what do you want? Why are you here? I guess they're testing my, why I'm down there.
Hmm.
I don't know what I said, but I do. I honestly don't. But I do remember getting up in front and telling them that I wanted whatever it was he said. I probably said, I want Jesus in my heart, or however they framed it for me, right?
Hmm.
And so I did the prayer, and then that was my exposure. And to be quite frank, that was powerful
Hmm.
emotionally. I had the tingles, and I
Yeah.
felt different, and I felt new, and I look back on it, uh, and I see it as a manifestation of emotions, of chemicals, you know. But it was something for sure that I was not used to. So it was easy for me to just say, yeah, that is what they said it was. That was you having a spiritual
Hmm.
birth, right?
Yeah.
So that's where it started. I brought that home to my Catholic mom. She didn't take that well, by the way. She,
Yeah, interesting.
yeah,
Because you were moving away from the church, or because you were a little too amped up?
yeah. Well, probably I was a little too amped up. Um, but also because the main thing was she felt like she had failed me religiously.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
she was supposed to bring me up as a good Catholic, and now I'm this other thing. So
Hmm.
that became a problem. Um, Boy, did I become self-righteous, though. I became this very uh, so righteous person, trying to be very good, and watching a lot of religious television. It's just so embarrassing. I remember watching
Little,
the Pat Robertson show. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Little TBN. Well, no, he was on. Was he TBN? C. What was
S- It must
CBN?
have been
Christian Broadcasting
maybe the
Network.
Christian
That's
Broadcasting
yeah,
Network.
yeah. My parents loved to watch Pat Robertson when I was
Well,
younger for a while. I mean, then eventually they kind of just stopped. And anyway, yeah, he's something.
oh,
He
he
was
was,
something.
and
Hmm.
that's how he was. Thankfully, he was. Um, but I say that because it illustrates how isolated I was within my family, which is an interesting kind of take, I think, on my faith. I had an older sister. Mom and dad still together at that time. So there's four of us in the house, and I became the oddball. Well, okay, to be honest, I probably was an oddball. Anyway, but I became the oddball in the house. But dad was more agnostic atheist, I suppose. Mom was Catholic. Joanne was whatever mom was. And I'm this weirdo who has this born again experience. So I'm in my room. I'm praying. I'm trying to read the Bible. I'm watching Pat Robertson. I'm trying to speak in tongues. I'm doing all these things. I think I just kind of gloss over that, but I really did think, well, that must be something I should be able to do, right?
Yeah. I mean, I get that. Baptist, the tongue thing was not really part of our thing, but you would still read about it and be like, well, maybe I love how you just conveyed that, because it felt like, well, maybe that's something I should be able to do, but I just don't know about it. And then I just never really pursued it. And then,
Yeah. Well, I wasn't Baptist
yeah.
at the time. So
Right, yeah, but it sounds like Methodist and Baptist probably share the same thing, which is that they don't place a high importance on speaking in tongues compared to like a Pentecostal church.
that's true. So I guess all that influence came strictly from Robertson's program, right? They were very much into that.
Yeah.
And so I was this weird kid trying to fit in. I would, when I went to school, I say this: when I went to school, we didn't carry backpacks. You carried your books stacked up, biggest to smallest, under your arm, right? And you walked around. And I had a red Bible on top of my stack. So I'm walking around high school. I'm just trying not to be popular at this point. I'm walking around high school with a red Bible on top of my stack of books, clearly visible, trying to be this Christian. And I'll try to speed on past this part, but it worked for a while until it was real for a while until I turned 16, got my driver's license, and started hanging out with the rest of the kids, right? In a small rural North Florida town, you hang out by getting in your car and you drive the track, the loop.
Okay.
And you look for your friends, right? And you gather in parking lots, right? And do stuff.
I have a similar experience from my youth. Yes.
Okay. I thought you might, being someone from the South. And so that whole thing that took away my zeal to be as Christian, and I just kind of went headlong in the other direction. Right. Then I just about 16, hey, let's party, and I did. I partied pretty hard, 6-7 years. Really had a great time.
Yeah. I like how you're like, that was actually a lot of fun. You and your backsliding.
Oh gosh, I was so bad, and that guilt, that religious guilt, came back. Okay.
Yeah, of course, so, it always did. Yeah.
Oh gosh, it did. I had so much fun that I began to feel like I had no conscious, no moral compass. I was just doing whatever I wanted, and I was 21, 22, and started feeling just bad life choices, feeling icky. And I started remembering that religious experience that I had. And I started reaching out back for that, started praying again. I mean, I won't go into the details, but there were a few very specific crises in my life that I brought upon myself at that moment that caused me to look to God. I'm like, it was one of those, if you get me out of this situation, God.
Right. Yeah. The bargaining. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was bargaining, and I did get through the crisis. It wasn't as bad as I thought, so said the doctor, and that's as far as I'll leave it. And so, I was fine, actually.
Yeah.
It was all paranoia.
The point being, you were scared, and you went to the one place that you felt safe, which was your faith.
Yeah, I went there, and I had that same emotional experience that I experienced at 13. I remember the time and the place. I remember the prayer that I said. I remember more about that than I did the first time. And I had this, I'm cleansed, I'm forgiven, I'm a new person feeling going on. And so, hey, that was great. I went back, I told my roommate at the time, we were now living in Central Florida, and he was there for the first one. And I came home, years later with a second confession of faith, and he's just like, "Holy shit, come on, dude, again?" Really? No, but it's real this time, you know. So anyway, that caused me to join a little Baptist church in Central Florida. Turned out to be an independent fundamental Baptist church.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I had no idea what that meant.
Little different than a Southern Baptist or an American Baptist. Those are, yeah,
Oh
the
boy.
the independent ones are. Did you have were snakes involved?
No, no.
Okay, so it wasn't that bad. I mean,
I mean, it was Florida, but we didn't let the
right?
snakes inside.
Yeah, no, it was alligators.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. My grandparents were Baptist, were Southern Baptist. So when I saw Baptist, I thought on the sign, I said, well, that's probably a good,
yeah,
a
yeah.
good place for me. Anyway, so by this time, I always worked construction as a teenager and a young adult, you know, for block masons, brick masons. I was down in Central Florida working on some commercial construction. But I finally decided that I was going to go to school and get a degree. So I went back to the community college and I was working through my degree, and I got through the community college, what we call community college, a 2-year degree. I got through that, and I was all set to go to the university there in Central Florida. And some of the old guys here at the church who I've become now like a year and a half involved with, um, said, you know, I think God wants you to be a preacher.
Oh,
And I laughed it off. And then I don't know, within a few months, it just got to me, and I said, yeah, maybe he does, right? And so I finished up my AA. I told the guy at the university that I actually wasn't going to come there anymore to get my mechanical engineering degree, like I told him I was. And I joined a little Bible college in Jacksonville, Florida, enrolled there.
okay.
Yeah. And so that was a big pivot point. Instead of going on to become an engineer, I got into the Bible college, and that's where I went. That's where I learned and got trained to be a, pastor. So I wrapped up that education in about 3 years. And there's a lot that can be said about that Bible college. That's horrible and shocking. I won't. That's maybe a different conversation, but I got through it. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
there is so much. There's so much about that is just typical and terrible. But yeah,
All right.
so I graduated and decided that the best thing I could do for the kingdom was to be a missionary in a foreign field. And I had already selected, by the way, let me backtrack. I mentioned where I went to church. That's also where I met the woman who would become my wife. We are still married today. Just celebrated
Okay.
30 years last
Wow.
week.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, interesting story for her, how she's had to ride through all of my ups and downs here. But
Yeah.
anyway,
I
um,
know.
so anyway, mission field, where are we going to go? So I said, well, the hardest place to go, and that's a little bit insight to my personality. Let's do the hardest thing. Let's go to the Sahara Desert in Africa. And I met a missionary from there. Talked to him personally. He tried to give me his pitch on why he should come work with me and among the Tuareg people in the Sahara. I said, that's fantastic. What a way to give my life. Hey, honey, let's go to Africa. And this was a phone call. And I was the only one talking after that. There was no response. Except I think I heard a sniffle or two, like she may be crying. So,
Yeah.
well, let's pray about it, I said. So, anyway, we ended up going to China.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, compromise. You prayed about it, and it didn't work out. So
Yeah, and obviously God had told me that it was not Africa. He told me it was Africa before I talked to her, and then after I talked to her,
and then he changed his mind. Yeah. So
he changed his mind.
yeah, or he offered an alternative solution for the peace. So
it's a miracle the way that worked out.
I know.
Yeah, and she's actually Chinese, a culture. She grew up in the Philippines, but she's is Chinese, and so it just made it interesting. But so we go there as missionaries, and we were independent Baptists, so we had to raise our own funds. So the first 2 years of our marriage was spent traveling the country, going to I went to 100 different churches all over the country, from east to west, north to south. We went as far as, the Great Northwest to LA, uh, up in Portland, Maine, down all over.
Hmm.
Uh, we raised a lot of money, uh, not a lot, but enough to go. Had like 50 churches supporting us, and we go to
I think
China.
that's a
And
lot. I mean, 50 churches. I mean, I don't have 50 people supporting me in anything. So, I mean, that's amazing. That's not
it
true. But
was
I mean,
amazing.
to have like churches giving financial support, and you probably, I'm guessing you went and did a little sales pitch, talking about what you hope to do and stuff like that. And then people were like, yeah, well, did a love offering or something along those
We
lines.
we lived off of love offerings,
Hmm.
and got us from place to place, and they would commit. We had an average of, I think the average committal level was around 50, some were 75 a month. So you
Hmm.
really had to get a lot.
Yeah.
But yes, I had to go do a pitch, had to go present the work. It was slides, slide
Hmm.
projector, and
Hmm.
it turned into PowerPoint eventually.
Yeah.
So that's
I
what I
was
learned.
just, you brought back memories for me of, sitting in church, listening to a missionary on a Sunday night give their thing. And you're right. It was actual slides with the carousel and the click, 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 yeah, and showing their pictures. And, yeah, I'd totally forgotten that those things even existed until right now. So that's
They
awesome.
do. There's somewhere in a museum. There's one of
Yeah.
those you can look at, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, so it worked. We raised the funds. The structure worked. It was set up for that. It wasn't that hard. It was a little too easy, to be honest with you. Too simple for someone, I think, to make it through the vetting process, if there is such a thing,
Mm.
and get ordained and get approved and funded and go. And so we went over there with the best of intentions, worked with a few more families, and we did this thing where we were building underground churches, right, because it was illegal
Right.
um, to do that. And it's so funny to me now to look back on it, how I justified breaking the laws of a sovereign nation uh, with with prejudice. I mean, I thought I had the right to do that.
I mean,
You
it's
know,
tricky, right? Because Americans have been brought up with this idea of like these rights, inalienable rights, right? And I mean,
yeah,
I agree. You have the right to defend yourself and against an attacker, and you do have the right to believe things whether or not they're true or not. I mean, that is that's just you. That's just a part of the human experience that really doesn't have anything to do with your nationality. But
right.
then, yeah, you're talking about really being subversive, and it's a tough one to wrestle with for me. I don't think I have a good solid opinion on is that a good idea or a bad idea, because I think about it, well, for instance, I know there's plenty of places where you could be a public atheist, and
Mm.
then so I would want to fight against that. I wouldn't say, "Oh man, I really respect these laws because they make a lot of sense." I so it's
Mm.
tough, and I don't. I understand where you're coming from. That you're thinking like maybe how do I feel about that? But we're in different places now, so we live and learn, and we go on. But was it really illegal? Like illegal? Like
It's
shut you
it
down type
what
of stuff?
Yeah, what we were doing was illegal. And the way that where the line was drawn for them was the Chinese have freedom of worship. It's narrowly defined, but what
Hmm.
they don't have is freedom of assembly.
Oh, okay.
So there are state-sponsored religious groups. There's Roman Catholic. There's Presbyterian. There may be a Methodist. There's different flavors of evangelicalism that are state-sponsored. There's seminaries, in China. Um, Buddha, of course, the old traditional ones that have Buddha and all that, but it's all controlled by the state, and the
Hmm.
state's official position is atheism, right? So I always thought
Yeah.
that was funny.
Yeah.
Um, but you can't just go and gather somewhere and say, "Oh, we're just expressing our religious belief." If you want to express a religious belief, you got to go to one of the state-approved
Okay.
um, places.
Yeah.
And so, in that sense, we were gathering in houses, in our house, in apartments, and all of that, and that was very much illegal.
Hmm.
And we justified it. You know, by saying that, well, we have the Great Commission. We have, what was it, Matthew 28? All power is given unto me, right? Go therefore and teach all nations. So
baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son. Yes.
yeah. Again,
Yeah.
I'm getting those bad goosebumps again when I start quoting scripture.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we felt justified. We felt like we had more power than Deng Xiaoping or Xi Jinping or whoever. Well, I don't think Deng Xiaoping was alive then, but anyway, whoever the leader was.
Yeah.
And so and that was quite scary, actually. And looking back on that, it's terrifying because we were raising our kids there, and they were too young to know really at that age who they belonged to. We went over with two girls. My son was born there, and our last child, our daughter, was well, conceived there. Right? She joined us on a plane ride back. you know,
Yeah.
but inside mom.
Right.
But I remember we ran into some trouble there as well, where we really pissed off the landlord. I did, and making stupid decisions on trying to move without really going through the right procedures. And he got mad, and he knew what we were up to. John Lee, he knew what we were up to. He always used to say things to try to get us to admit it, but we never did. But when we pissed him off, he turned his political power against me, and I spent 1 or 2 days running from the police with my family in a car. I called it running. I was just because they were calling me and said, "You need to come into the precinct." I'm thinking, "No, I'm not going to any Chinese precinct for nothing, buddy." And we ended up being invited to leave, and we did. But I remember having our home church services and thinking there'd be some nights when it's like Saturday night and Sunday's the next day around. It's like church the next day. And I'm having this anxiety attack over what if they come in their, what I would call the paddy wagon, where they come in their wagons tomorrow and haul us off, right?
Yeah.
And I got my kids here. And I had this really high-minded idea that, I'm asking these people to trust God and for them to come and worship and have church. And because my thought was maybe I'll just go and leave my kids, right, to protect them. But I'm saying, no, you can't. You have to live, practice what you preach, right? And so we would go, and scared to death, we'd walk up to that building, and we'd have church, and we'd start singing, and I'd preach, and we'd have a little bit of fellowship afterwards, and nothing bad ever happened, thankfully, but that was just luck or whatever you want to call it. Eventually, bad things happened where as I just described, we were invited to leave. The police came over, did some interrogating, and so we left. But what's scary is that really my kids could have been taken from me at an age when they wouldn't have known, some of them who mom and dad were. Not much later. So anyway,
I'll tell you what, though, I bet that those kind of stories, though, would really sell whenever you're trying to get donations. You go back and you say, like, hey, here's how it is. They're really, oppressive, and talk about that. And then it only helps, right? At that point.
It made for great prayer letters, if you know what those are.
Was the prayer letter where they would send a letter and just talk about things? But I mean, you're not there, but like you're mailing back home to the sponsor church or something like that, right? So
please pray for X, Y, and Z, and we would list all of our fun. We would try not to embellish too much, but you know what they're looking for, so you put it in there. It was easy, but something happened to me during that time that really started some deconstruction, but at a very, very low level of deconstruction. This was a very fundamentalist group, and by fundamentalist, I mean, I know you're aware of this. I've heard one of your guests before speak on this, and when I heard him speak, he and I had the same experience. But it's one of these denominational groups, these factions that very strict on a lot of things. King James Bible only. Right? Women cannot wear pants, right?
Okay.
And no syncopated rhythm, no rock rhythm. They called it. I learned the word syncopation from a Baptist pastor. I don't know what it meant, but apparently it's bad, or it was bad. And the list that goes on depends on who you're talking to. There's a long list of don'ts, right?
A long list, yeah.
Oh God. And I started realizing that I don't really think I believe that stuff. And
Yeah.
our mission agency that sent us out was um, had tried to modulate or modify a little bit and say, hey, some of you, some of your wives and your daughters, it's okay if you live in extremely cold climates for them to wear pants underneath their skirts.
Yeah, that's okay.
And
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
And okay, that just felt weird to me to say that. But what really got to me was the other part members of my team were livid about this liberalism that was creeping back into the mission organization. They called
Uh-huh.
that liberalism.
That was liberalism.
That was
Two layers of
liberalism.
clothing, and then, I mean, surely if you're like me, there was always this little bit of like, I learn about the Pharisees and all this kind of stuff. And then some of the same stuff we're doing in church. I mean, I'm at this point, I'm a Christian. I'm in church. I'm hearing do's and don'ts. And occasionally you come across something that like that, where it's just like, this doesn't even make sense. To try to justify it. We're really trying to shoehorn this in to the point that it really feels just dogmatic and really no different than what I thought we were supposed to be against, according to, how Jesus operated, right? And it was one
Yeah.
of those things. And I think when you keyed on something earlier where you said it was a low lying deconstruction. And this is the thing. When people say, what led you to become an atheist or an agnostic, just to not believe in a God, right? It's never one thing and it's never all at once. It's little questions here and
Yeah.
there, like, I don't know, does that make sense, does this make sense? And then it oftentimes doesn't match like your real world experience,
Yeah.
as far as why we should do that. It doesn't make sense that I should tell somebody, just because you're a woman, that you have to have pants underneath your skirt, probably like a long jean skirt, right? That's what I'm guessing.
Oh, if it's cold, sure.
Yeah. And you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But anyway, I don't want to take away from that, but it's just the process of deconstruction being, it's long and it starts off small until I think it kind of builds up. And it sounds like this was kind of, maybe that was maybe one of the start. I bet if you think about it, you'll probably think about other things that you're like, back then I didn't think that made sense either. I still think of things that I'm like, oh yeah, I've been thinking about different things for a while. Um,
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I no, it very much was the start of something. I think it opened up the permission structure, if you will. I don't know if that's the way you say that, but it gave me permission to start questioning the people that I had set
mhm.
on the pedestal as being farther along, more wise, more experienced, to put it in the vernacular, more godly or whatever. You
Yeah,
know, I began to question that, and that was the first for me, and really ever. Um, that I never really questioned it. I thought, hey, this is the right way. Back from when I first found that Baptist church, this is the way. I've led here's an old word, a profligate life, right? That's an old King James word for the prodigal son, right?
I don't know that one. So
Yeah,
profligate.
I I've led well, we were King James only, so I learned
Right.
a lot of archaic terms, but it was just a kind of a wild life and doing whatever I
Hmm.
wanted. And these guys, hey, they had morals, they had ethics, they stood for stuff, and I said, this is better. And so I thought, this is all new to me. I've obviously been doing it wrong. I'm going to listen to these guys and I'm going to just figure out to do what they do. And that's how I rolled for years
Yeah.
until this point when I began to give myself permission to think for myself and question, hey, I don't, I think this is kind of ridiculous. This whole pants on women. I don't
Yeah.
understand it and it's
Yeah.
stupid. And I don't know if I want to be a part of this group anymore.
Hmm.
Um, especially way out here, away, in China, in Beijing, China, away from, you know, my people back in the
Yeah.
States. So um, we were there 2 years at this point. We were supposed to be there 4 years had to go and then come back for a year,
Yeah.
and then go back before more type of thing. But this was a 2-year mark, and I started planning my way out. So I don't
Oh,
think
okay.
we're going
Yeah.
to do this.
But
And,
that doesn't mean you
and
weren't a believer still. You were just saying, I don't think that I want to be, well, a missionary, right?
yeah,
And then were you thinking that you didn't want to be part of your fundamentalist church anymore, that maybe you wanted to find something a little less fundy?
that's you nailed it. That was it. I very much valued my personal commitment and love for Jesus. I mean, that was my identity, and I felt like I was coming to a point where I had an obligation because of that love and commitment to Him, that I had to make this stand. I had to break away from what is now was seen as antithetical, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I didn't want to leave the church or teaching or preaching or anything. I just want to get out of this fundamentalist group that I thought was harmful.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and so we came home early, uh, under the legitimate guise of we need more money sooner than we thought we'd need more money. We're going to go back and we're going to raise more funding.
Yeah.
Uh, but I knew I wasn't going to go back. I just knew there was no way. But I couldn't just tell that in the first letter because then I would have no money.
Hmm.
So I had four kids. Uh,
Right. See, and that's the thing that I don't know if you're familiar with the Clergy Project.
mm,
It's a clergyproject.org is a website that is for people that are still in ministry, but then they're like, oh, I need to get out. But then again, you're trying to find ways out because we do have to still provide food, clothing, shelter, et cetera. And so now I was never clergy, so I haven't taken advantage of it. So I hope it's useful to those. And it sounds like you probably could have at that time, if somebody could have came across and said, we could probably get you out of there. I don't know though that it still may require some unbelief, and you weren't there yet. So you were still firmly in that. But it is hard to make, and that's why you got a lot of bivocational pastors, right?
mm.
Because you're like, well, I'll do some other job and also be a pastor. So
I think so,
yeah.
and that is part of my story as well. Not the Clergy Project. That's interesting. I do think I've heard the name, but uh, perhaps not. But it sounds familiar.
Mm.
Um, well, when I came back, I wanted to stay. I thought in ministry, and so I looked around at different denominations, and really should have surprised no one. But I was not welcome in other denominations. My credentials didn't translate to any of the mainline
Yeah.
denominations.
Right. Yeah, because the mainline Protestants are a lot more accepting of people and things like genes. Uh, yeah.
The last thing they wanted was some indie fundy coming into their ranks and stirring up trouble.
I could
Yeah,
see why they might be a little hesitant for
yeah,
sure. So, did
me
you ever do
too.
any street preaching?
Oh, a lot,
Oh, okay.
a
Yeah.
lot of street preaching, and
Yeah.
maybe I'll that's coming in. And I did some in. You didn't do street preaching in China because it's kind of illegal that you do, you know, approach people, but that's just witnessing. It's
Mhm.
like when you're on the
Right.
Great Wall of China giving out a gospel tract. That's still so exciting. It's just what a
Yeah.
great sentence, right?
Yeah.
Doing anything on the Great Wall of China is exciting, but
Yeah.
but um,
So
but
what was
yeah, yeah.
the next
Go ahead.
phase? You're talking about the excitement of your the bivocationality. So aside from, you know, pastoring, then you're also interested in something else. I'll let you go into that. You
Yeah.
get interested
So
in something else.
yeah, I was. So we came back to the States. I found out that I really couldn't jump into another religion, and it was okay with me because you're out of the frying pan into the fire possibly. So I said, well, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to finish that engineering degree that I started um,
Hmm.
almost a decade. I don't know how many years ago at this point, but several years ago at this point. It was a decade actually. And my wife, thankfully, had a pretty decent job as a physical therapist, and she went back to work, and I went back to school. And I finished up my engineering degree while we had the poor kids at home. Not mechanical, civil, because I thought it'd be easier. at my advanced age of 30. So, oh boy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did get it. I got the degree, and it was a good time in the market. I got a couple of I had a job before I graduated. It was just a good time of work in the consulting part of engineering, basically construction consulting, where we design construction plans for whatever. And this was for site civil work. But I wasn't in ministry at this time. We attended a Chinese church. I still love the whole Chinese thing. I spent 2 years learning Chinese, and I love to be around it. So it was, we were in a Chinese church, and we were going there. I was teaching the youth, but I was working as a brand newly minted engineer with, engineering training. You have to work 4 years before you get your license. But I was working, I was enjoying it, really, really going well for 2 years. And I have to pause here because this is really part of the story, is an important part of the story. 2 years into my engineering work, I started feeling guilty again about leaving ministry. Obviously I have some issues, right? But don't we all? Right? So,
Yeah.
I'm feeling like, God, I can't believe I left. And maybe it was just the 2 year mark is like a 7 year itch for me. I don't know. It's just getting, impatient with my job, whatever. Called my former pastor, the one that was there who ordained me, the one that was there when I went off to Bible college, at the first Indie Fundy Baptist church that I went to. I called him up for some advice. And he says, if you ever want to get back in ministry, let me know. And that wasn't why, I don't think that's why I called him, but that's what he took over the conversation. And I said, I will get back to you. Hey, and within a few months, I had quit my engineering job and I went back to work, moved back to Central Florida, and was working as the associate pastor for this pastor. And that's what we did for about 6 or 7 years. And associate pastor, kids were in private Christian school. Wife was working because they don't pay very much in these roles. And not that she can work if she wants to. I'm not trying to say she shouldn't have to, but kids were small. Anyway, I'm digressing. Yeah. It's fine that she worked. So I thought that in this pastor, I worked there for 6 or 7 years. He says, look, I'm getting old. I'm going to retire. I'm going to retire in about 5 years. I want you to take over when I retire. And I'd been there about 7 years, and he had not said a word about retiring. Looking back on that now, I realize it's very, very hard to leave something that you started. He started that work, when he was 17 or whatever, and
wow,
he didn't want to leave it. It was his baby, it was his whole life. I get it, but I was also mad about it too. Now, so this would end after 7 years. But you asked me if I did any street preaching, right? Just a moment ago, I think you did.
I did, yeah.
That this was a period where
I just don't see fundamentalist and preacher, and I can't separate that, because I feel like anytime you run across a street preacher, they're probably coming from a very fundamentalist background. Otherwise, because they take it seriously, they really feel like they were called to the Great Commission, to go out and to tell people, you got to do it. You guys got to know, it is my responsibility to tell you, because if I don't do that, then your blood could be on my hands, so to speak. So, but that is typically very, very, hell and brimstone fundamentalist churches that do that. I don't see anybody else really, doing street preaching. Maybe some modern evangelical kids, but that's a whole other ballgame. So,
absolutely, because I mean, it's such a commitment. And if people aren't going, if I'm not saving people from hell, then why am I, so involved? It really has to be something that extreme to command that type of loyalty. This is the most important thing in the universe, and that's not exaggerating in our mind, former mind. The most important thing in the universe is to save people from eternal damnation.
Right.
So it really can't be anything more important than that.
No.
And that was great. What a great purpose for a young man to feel like he's part of.
Yeah.
And so I did. I know I've heard one of your guests mention Ray Comfort in The Way of the Master.
Yeah.
And I eventually found that after years of failed attempts at evangelism. And well, I got whole hog into that for a 2 or 3 years, maybe more. I went out to L.A., did some street preaching with him in his training camps in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
And Huntington Beach, and then in front of Grom's Chinese Theater and different places, and learned how to do that. Brought it back to Central Florida, and every weekend or so, I'd bring my little stool out and my little sign. I did the whole thing. And well, now Ray's method isn't as harsh as some. He tries to create a ramp, a slow on ramp for people, so he's not immediately yelling at you. But he does get there. He does get to the point where he says you're going to hell,
Mm-hmm.
but he kind of eases you into it. So I felt like it
Yeah.
was a little more civil, a little more,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. It's more honest to just yell at people from the beginning, really. I mean, because you just like, I'm just going to cut out all this other bullshit and just be like, listen, buddy, you're going to hell,
Oh,
rather than get the soft on ramp, just get straight to the point. So,
well, no, it was so important to be able to do that to me. And I remember going to different evangelistic events where I would argue with atheists. I would love to meet an atheist because I
mm-hmm,
didn't believe in them. I didn't believe they existed because I had spent a lot of time studying something called presuppositional apologetics. I I can't really explain it because it really doesn't make any sense. It's very circular, but
mm-hmm,
it's that deep, 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 deep down. Everyone has this very deep presupposition and things that have to be true for anything else to be true because we can't know everything, and so you
mm-hmm.
have to start at some level of faith, right? And it's
Right. Well, it'd be
right.
something like, well, if we go ahead and grant that God exists, then the universe must have needed a creator. And like, wait a minute, can we go back to that first part? Because I don't presuppose that a God exists. I kind of
Mm,
need a little bit more evidence, and so that's kind of in line with what you're talking about, right? Where you start with the conclusion, that the oh well, God exists, so let's build off of that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm actually a step before that, or at least I am now, So um,
well,
does that fall in line with
yeah.
presuppositional apologetics?
Oh, it does. But I would my the reason the way my mind was able to think I had the platform from which to argue with atheists was I said, well, look, atheists believe in uh, the big what's called the Big Bang, is my
Mm-hmm.
understanding that everything was at a singularity, a single. Everything was compacted. Everything. When I say everything, I mean it's just all that exists in the
Yeah.
universe was down to a minuscule point, if you can even call it a point. Uh, and my thought was, well, where is that? You know,
Yeah.
where's that stuff? It's got to be somewhere, right? And so
Yeah.
there's something behind that. Well, what is behind that? Well, we don't know. Well, there, look,
Mm-hmm.
your presupposition. You're believing something that existed in a way you can't explain it. So you have faith, just like I do. I think
Mm-hmm.
we should go with It's easier in my mind to think, well, there's a God outside of the universe and space and time that created it. I would say that either one of us were both dealing in some type of circular, position. So I would argue that, right?
Yeah.
And and part of that was that part of presuppositional the arrogance was that, and this is an add-on to what I just said, but was that everyone. I should put it this way: all that aside, doesn't matter because deep down inside, everyone knows there's a God, right? And
Right.
because there is.
That's the teaching, right? Yeah, that deep down inside, whether you're willing to admit it or believe it or not, like outwardly, man, right?
And I just got to
So
keep
it's
poking
just
at
that's
you. And
right. Just yeah, and it'll come to the surface, and then it'll all be good. So
yeah, so that was fun. That was fun. I enjoyed arguing with people and believing I was doing God a great service.
hmm
And so yeah, well, eventually I left that Independent Baptist Church for another position nearby, 30 miles away, where I was a senior pastor. Same flavor, a little, not quite as strict, but we're talking, by a couple of degrees less fundamental. Not a lot. It wasn't that big of a deal, but I was there as a senior pastor, and this was the place that finally broke. This was where I walked away, and with the full deconstruction, everything just fell off when I walked away from this place. And I walked away in 2020 as their pastor,
hmm
and by 2021, I was I was coming to arguments in myself. Okay, is it agnosticism or atheism? I'm between one of these. I'm no longer a
Mm-hmm.
believer, that's for sure. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, and there's so many details for that church, but it was and maybe we should go into those details because that was the defining point.
Well,
But
yeah, like what I mean, again, acknowledging that there's multiple things, but was there a thing or two that you're like, I mean, I have it for me. Like there may not have been like one thing that was the end all be all right from the beginning, but at the end, by the time you piled everything else up, like for me, getting rid of biblical literalism really, yeah, I mean, like I learned that the Noah's Ark story was written before by a completely different civilization, but was in the same region, and they just pulled
mm,
from that. And we linguists have ways to know for sure, cognates in the language that they know that the Noah story, from Genesis is borrowed from that other story, from like the flood myth story from the Epic of Gilgamesh. And and for someone like me that was raised, now I abandoned Southern Baptist stuff, I don't know, whenever I was 20 something. Whenever I became an adult and began to like pursue my own ideas about things, but that, I mean, it was still always there, right? I've even
mm,
talked to my wife about this, like after I was starting to deconstruct. I'm like, well, what do you think about the Noah's Ark story? She's like, I don't know. I just thought it was true because that's what she was brought up with. And, so like you think these things are true, but then like you have a hard time like conveying why it's not. And then for some reason that just causes this cognitive dissonance within you that you have to like fight against. And like for me, there for the longest time, anytime I had cognitive dissonance, it was like I probably just don't understand this as well as
mm-hmm,
somebody else, and I just need to keep at it.
mm-hmm,
But eventually, you get to the point. For me, I was like, okay, well, maybe this actually isn't true at all.
mm.
And that's why
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense, is because it's not true. So, are there a couple of things that were really like much heavier than other points of unbelief that really helped drive you out?
So I think there were two or three threads that came together eventually. Um, One, which I didn't realize at the time what effect it would have on me, but I made a friend who I hired as my associate pastor, and his friend he lived locally. He had went to Dallas Theological Seminary, um, and was just couldn't quite get them to agree on his PhD dissertation on Greek infinitives. That's, I mean, he was a brilliant. He was younger than me by about 20
Uh-huh.
years, but he was brilliant, and I liked him. My kids liked him, and all the kids liked him. So he came on as my assistant, but he had been to seminary. I had been to Bible college, and I did get a master's degree, but from the same Bible college. So, really wasn't
Mm-hmm.
that much extra learning. But he had this whole different level of learning. When you go to seminary, you start to learn the things that you were just talking about that cause you to realize that, hey, this story isn't what it's purported to be in churches, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is an ancient story, and it's just been borrowed and modified. And he brought all these revelations to me when we had these conversations about Genesis and different doctrines. And he's still a very strong believer, but he did not believe the Old Testament literally, the 7-day creation. But he walked
Mm-hmm.
on eggshells around me and our people because he knew that he couldn't talk about that
Yeah.
very openly. But he
Right.
put seeds in my mind about that. About, hey, Moses and these stories. Hey, these were an early people that were trying to communicate some truths to their people in a fashion that would resonate with them at that time. You
Yeah.
know, and that's what these stories are. Which was, to me at that point, he was blaspheming.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, you're like, no, this is wrong. This is what those other churches do and what they believe, and they're heretical, and yeah,
Yeah.
I feel that like so much. Oh my gosh.
Oh, we were literalist, very, very
Yeah.
literal. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's simple. It's not true, but it's simple, or
Mm-hmm.
simplistic, I should say.
Yeah.
Well, but I liked him a lot. And so, you know, and I needed a friend. You don't get a lot of friends when you're pastoring a small church. No one wants to be too close to the pastor. you
Yeah.
know? And so I figured out a way to, turn the other or look the other way whenever I would think about what he believed.
Uh-huh.
Um, Instead of bringing him up on charges of heresy,
Yeah. Well, that was nice of you.
uh, you know, uh, I'm a gracious guy.
Yeah.
So that was why, and those thoughts would later help me in my deconstruction, realizing that someone
Mm-hmm.
I trusted and respected had already pointed things out to me. I just wasn't ready to accept them.
Yeah.
Later I would be, and later it would help me put some pieces together
Uh-huh.
to see that why this isn't a literal, a real revelation from a real God.
Yeah.
The other things was I was wearing out. I was truly expecting some type of supernatural reaction from this God that I served.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting to see things happening, and because I really felt I was really committed. You know,
You
really,
sound committed. I mean,
yeah.
and not that you needed to be committed. I'm
I feel like
making
I
a
should
joke
be.
there, but yeah, yeah. But I mean, you're really on fire at this. I mean, you've done all the things that you know to do. You're following, you're reading the word. I mean, hell, you're preaching. You're going to China, for goodness sake. I mean, so yeah, you would think that compared to most people that only go, I don't know, a couple times a year, you're far and above that by any measure. Um,
Yeah, and so I convinced myself that hey, I should have some type of fruit, as we called it, from all this work. Now,
yeah.
of course, there wasn't any because there was no spirit to bear fruit. There was nothing spiritual going on. It was just
Mhm.
people in a group, a culturally accepted bond, around religion. Uh, if you will, a campfire that
Yeah.
we all gathered around for safety.
Yep.
Right, it's as old as time. But we convince ourselves that, this is more than this is supernatural. It's a supernatural life flowing through each of us. We share in this one spirit, right, that indwells all of us. And so we have this spiritual link. I love those ideas. They're so great, to
Mhm.
think that. But it just wasn't true. It's not true. And so it, people with miracle stories notwithstanding, I hear those all the time, but I don't want to argue about someone's miracle story. But there really wasn't anything going on other than what was going on between people, right? But when you
Yeah.
expect to see that going on, you can justify it. You can make excuses. And my favorite excuse was, well, you're just God has a different plan, right?
Yeah.
And if you feel like you're not, just because you're not getting the results you wanted, then that's your problem. You're just seeking admiration. You should be humble enough to accept your little corner of ministry, and you're just the plotter. You're just the guy that just keeps going until the end. Never sees much fruit or much result, but God's so proud of you. Just keep going.
Mhm.
And that satisfied me for quite a number of years. Prayer meetings and begging and pleading and cajoling people and expecting to see something happen and always believing that around the next corner is going to be some great breakthrough. And I just got worn out just waiting for that. You know, I
Yeah.
just can't anymore. And and then um, 20 it was around 2020, and we had a lot going on in 2020, right? We had
I remember
George.
a couple of things going on. Yeah, in 2020. I
Yeah,
I think there was a pandemic or something. I can't remember, but yeah, I mean, between a pandemic and an election, and
yeah.
I don't know what else. That feels like 20 years ago now at this point. But
Oh God, it was
you know,
06.
yeah, I know.
Well, just prior to that, there was some, or I forget now what happened, but you remember the George Floyd incident, of course, right?
Yes. Right.
And that was my first and my kids, my now teenage kids, first exposure to social justice causes, right? And so some of them got really involved in this. Um, Black Lives Matter,
Mm-hmm.
which is apparently not allowed in independent fundamental Baptist churches. You can't say things like Black Lives Matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's part of and that's the marriage of evangelicalism or fundamentalism and politics, right wing politics.
Right.
Those are intertwined. And so that those two connections have caused a lot of friction in my church. Me being the pastor, my daughter being very vocal, people started, criticizing her on social media, and I wasn't going to stand for that. Turns out I
Right.
love my kids way more than I love anybody else in that congregation, right? And so
Yeah.
it created some tension, and then I started preaching on racism and against racism and
Yeah.
how the history, how Americans' history, our history in America is rooted in racism and when we
Mm-hmm.
mistreated black people and expect
So
them to
you're
become
you're like
Christians. Yeah.
you're like sliding into liberation theology at that point, getting
I
into
was.
some of that stuff, which honestly, really appealing, really attractive. I was dabbling around with that toward the end,
Mm,
where I was like, oh yeah, like I get these ideas, that makes sense to me, because it actually added just so much more meaning and purpose to something that, like you said, you're waiting for all these grand spiritual renewal things or whatever, and you're just not seeing them. And then you see, liberation
mm.
theology. And you're like, oh, well, actionable. I like it. Let's roll with it and see what happens. So,
That's great. I think that's I love the way you put that because it gave a renewed sense of purpose, right?
hmm
For my life. But the other stuff, the seeing people come down the aisle and being baptized just wasn't panning out. Right? So,
yeah,
uh,
right.
but but this is something that I can feel passionate about. So it's a part of me that has always been a part of me. Um, compassion and empathy and caring for the underdog and caring for people, which I think most people have that capacity. Um, but some people don't. Some people are able to bury empathy and compassion and sympathy and become really bad people.
Yeah.
But I really like that part about what I understood Christianity to be was Jesus was always for the poor and for the downtrodden and for the underprivileged and the political outcasts. He was for those people, right? You could easily find those teachings in the New Testament about Jesus that would cause a person like me or most people to kind of, endear us to. You
hmm
could imagine this is what Christianity is about. It's about the underprivileged and caring for the broken. Hey, those are great ideals.
Yeah.
And there are stories like that, and uh, now I don't want to say truths, but ideas like that all throughout the Scripture, right? So there's plenty there for you to pick from and say, hey,
hmm
this is a good thing that we're doing here. There's just so much bad in there along with it. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to challenge you a little bit because,
Okay.
and this is kind of comes from my own personal challenges to myself. So hear me out. I think it's okay to say truth, because, or truths,
Mm,
because, whenever you get to the point that you're like, all right, I don't believe in a god or gods, then
mm,
you tend to start really rejecting almost everything associated with it.
mm,
However, it's kind of one of those don't throw the baby out with the bathwater type of things. Like some of my
mm,
discussions, I've become more open to the idea that there's stuff in there that are truthy, a lot of falsy, a lot of not
yeah.
truthful stuff. But there's some stuff that is still good to take from, just like
Mm,
a good book. Not saying
Mm.
that that's a good book at all, because oh man, I'm going through Second Kings right now. I just got to finish
Oh,
Second Kings, and I'm going to take a little break. And I'm like, these
sure.
chapters are too long, and who wrote this? Oh my gosh, it's terrible. But you know, I
I feel
I'm
you.
just saying, I think I would edit it differently. That's if I were, if I were writing it and I
It
was
was a different time.
omnipotent. But yes, but but there are still, I still quote some verses every once in a while.
Mm.
Somebody says, "Well, I'd sure like to do this or that," and I'm like, "Well, you have not, because you asked not." Yeah, thanks, Paul. Like that's true. You don't have it because you never even asked in the first place. It's not terribly profound, but it's still a truth, right? That you're not just going to get stuff handed to you.
No.
The idea of a man, if you don't work, you don't eat. Well, in a capitalistic society, actually, that's pretty accurate. That doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that you should be denied food just because you can't work,
Mm-hmm.
But so there's some things there that I think we can still call them truths and
Mm-hmm.
feel okay with that. It's just that you're going to get some wacko that says, "Well, because you found that to be true, then the whole book must be true, and you're just wrong." And I'm like, "No, that's not true," because you could still have a work of literature and get truth out of it and still acknowledge that this is fiction. So that's my only you know uh
I like that.
challenge for you to maybe think about that. It might ease the goosebumps a little bit here and there. you know
Yeah, I was definitely getting goosebumps earlier. I was being triggered for sure.
yeah, I
I,
know.
I, I
Well, and that's why I encourage people to wrestle with it. Not in the Israel sense, in a dream, but you should. Sorry, couldn't stop myself from interjecting that one. But yeah, you should wrestle with it. You should um, take stock of what what you've believed in the past, what you know now, and then say, well, is there some things that I can pull some good out of it? And I that's why I read with my daughter. We're going through all of the Bible. I read it when I was much younger, and then now we're rereading it because I'm like, I think you should be exposed to these things at least once,
mm,
because you're going to find literary references to these because they are a part of human history.
mhm,
And if we were in another part of the world, I bet whatever religion they are in that part of the world, it's the same thing. There's going to be references to
mm,
something, like from the Quran or something. So
mhm,
it's good to know. It doesn't mean you have to necessarily complete it as or digest it as truth, like all true, but there are little droplets of truth. you know
It got me thinking about how these droplets of truth found their way in the canon or in the scriptures.
mm,
And they're, for the
mm-hmm.
most part, a lot of these things are just wise sayings that are accepted, that cultures have
Yeah,
learned and agreed upon as being good ideas. But
right.
once you put them in, the, bound them in leather and put them in the 66 canonical books, suddenly it
Mm,
becomes from God. You know,
right. Yeah.
and it's not from God. It's
Not from God. Yeah.
it just
Um.
it's true, but it doesn't mean like you said, no, the whole thing is not. Doesn't mean that everything in there is true. Just those
Yeah.
things have
So
always been
so
true.
you eventually returned back to your engineering work, right?
I did.
Okay.
I had a big fight with the elders at the church during COVID. I was already fed up um, with a lot of stuff. Prior to that, I had decided I need to be bivocational um, because I'm starting to feel like I'm a hired speaker. Right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm losing this idea that I'm on a mission from God. I've been listening to the Blues Brothers
Good.
soundtrack all week, so um,
Nice.
I'm no longer on a mission from God. I feel like I'm just a hired guy. They want to need somebody to fill a pulpit every week, and it doesn't matter what I
Yeah.
say. I could cite Dr. Seuss, and they'd still show up. It just doesn't matter.
Right.
Um, so I don't like this idea of being paid by them for this. So I'm gonna get a job, and I'll do this part time. Yeah, I'll give them my weekends. I'm over. time. And so I didn't go back into engineering immediately, although I had done that. I thought maybe I need to go into IT. Maybe that's the
Mhm.
easier thing. So I got a couple of IT certifications um, and looked for a job. I eventually found one um, with the city where I lived at their water and wastewater department. Uh, I got the opportunity because one of my parishioners was the fire chief in town. He knew the director for the city, and so he got me the interview. Um, I got a job in IT for the
Mhm.
city where I lived, working for their SCADA department, which I didn't know what SCADA was. I had to look it up. And SCADA has to do with the automation and the controls of industrial systems. SCADA
Mhm.
it stands for supervisory control and data acquisition. Basically, think of Homer Simpson sitting in front of his control screen, right?
Mhm.
And somebody had designed those screens, and that's SCADA, right? So it's
Yeah.
a job where you're involved in the design of those things. So, but I was on the IT side of that, and so I had a job full time. I began to give back my salary to the church. They were paying me a pittance of what they hired me for because I didn't want to be
Mhm.
beholden to them anymore. So when the deacons came to me with a couple of ultimatums about what I should do and say differently, I said, you know what, we can just stop right here.
Mhm.
I'm done. I may have pounded the table, said things a little more emphatically, but yeah, I was I was done. And um, plus they were starting anyway. I'll leave that alone. I don't want to bring other ugly things up, but I left and I had this job with the city and I was fine. I didn't go back to the church anymore. I did some church from home because that's what you did back then during COVID. You did church from home. We watched
Yep.
church on TV or on our computers,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
that's what we did. Really was going to try to find another place. I thought I should just find another place, and so I'm getting a little far ahead, but maybe not. But I guess you asked me about my job. I didn't with the things that led me out. There was this. I mentioned the one friend with his liberal ideas. Then there was the lack of spiritual indication, anything spiritual realities
Was
going on,
right.
losing a passion and a desire for it, and getting to let go of certain doctrines was another thing. Um,
Yeah.
I used to believe in hell very, very strongly. Um, I know I'm backtracking. Feel free to pull me out, but I
Oh no,
remember.
I totally want to get into hell. I'm wait a minute, that sounded
Yeah,
wrong. But
I
you know,
could. I know a guy. I know a guy.
yeah.
Uh, my father was an unbeliever most of his life, and then towards the end, he started saying that he was a believer. When I asked him what happened, he said, "Oh, nothing. I've always been a believer." I was like, "Well, that doesn't track." But anyway, so
Mhm.
he dies in 2010, and I'm doing his funeral. I'm still in the Central Florida Church, not as the associate pastor.
Yeah.
I do his funeral. I'm still very much hellfire and brimstone. I get up and I do his funeral, and back in our hometown, and my sister's there too. But I was not going to give any impression that I thought my dad was in heaven. Wasn't going to say that at all because
Mhm.
I didn't believe he was. I believed he was in hell from the moment
Okay.
he took his last breath. He went to hell. That was my theology.
Right.
It's weak. It's unfaithful to suddenly change your theology because now it affects you personally. You know, you got to stick with what you believe. And I've always preached that hell is for believers only, and he was not a believer. And I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Heaven's for believers only. He was not a believer, and so he's in hell. It was my understanding. And so I preached that without saying Dad's in hell. I wanted to warn them that you need to avoid hell. That's how I did his funeral. That's
Right.
how I did all funerals. It's horrible. I feel so bad. That was such an apology for all the people asked me to do their funeral, especially if they weren't from a Christian family, because I made sure they knew that they needed to decide to go to heaven and not go to hell. Right. So
Mhm.
I preached them in hell. And I told myself that I was okay with that. And this is what's so twisted about thinking. I think this is twisted, is that how can I be okay with a God that put my father in hell, how could I enjoy eternity knowing that my father was suffering in hell? And that question that I asked myself, uh, I found a neat answer for it. And I said, well, this is it. God is so good. Now, I'm saying this, I don't believe this anymore, but God is so good, too good, really, for me to understand how good he is, right? But when I get to heaven, all will be revealed. I will have a new way of thinking. I'll understand how it was the right thing. God, to say that now just gives me chills. It was the right
Yeah.
thing. And I'll praise God forever because he threw my father in the eternal lake of fire. Now, how fucked up is that?
Hey, praise Jesus, man. Like, that's just how it's supposed to be. I mean, I know it bothers me too. It bothers me to no end to think about that. And me, and you and I are both parents. And
Yeah.
whenever you become, I mean, there's all sorts of little shit that happens whenever you become a parent that you're like,
Yeah.
okay, so now I got to wrestle with Santa Claus not real, Jesus is real, actually, stuff like that, right? How do I do this kind of wrestling with that? And the decision we ended up landing on was like early on was like, okay, well, we'll just tell them pretty early that Santa's not real either,
Mm,
or tell them not real. But then, and we wanted to be that like Santa, Easter bunnies, Tooth Fairy. We'll give you till about like 7 or 8, and then after that, we're pulling you out, But then you have to deal with like, well, how do I explain Jesus and God, and like you can't see him, and everybody.
mm,
There's so many churches, Same thing with hell, right? How do I tell my children that they might go to hell just because they don't buy into this story? That seems a bit extreme for a punishment from a God that's supposedly just, and I'm like, listen, the evidence is terrible. So like, if you and you're gonna eternal torment, and then you get into differences upon like, well, everybody has different thoughts on eternal
mm,
torment. There could be annihilation, there could be
mm.
this purgatory thing, which honestly sounds a lot like COVID, um, the pandemic, where you're just
Yeah.
hanging around forever, so,
Yeah.
uh, um,
It's funny.
so I mean, it doesn't make sense, and it seems unjust whenever you really, really think about it. And I'm the same way now, where I'm like, oh man, those things sound terrible. They just sound terrible, and that like you've not thought it out. But it's hard whenever you're still deeply believing in it to pull yourself out of it.
My my commitment to hell was strong, as you can tell, and
Hmm.
I gave it up, thankfully. I think it's because faith. We believe that faith is a virtue, and I want to be a virtuous person. You know,
Yeah.
believing is hard, and the harder things are to believe, and you still believe, and that just means you've got more strength, you've got more faith, and the it's really it's a cycle that feeds on itself, and so
Yeah.
you take honor, you take a personal pride and satisfaction in the fact that you can believe the hard stuff. You know, you're not
Hmm.
weak, right? And it's terrible. I think it's a horrible system. I think it works well. Obviously, it works very well on
Yeah.
people to get them to believe these things. Um,
Do you think there's a patriarchal element to that? I mean, I have never thought about what you just said until right now, which is, I'm going to put it
mhm,
in a way that most people could at least understand. It's more manly to be able to do that hard shit,
yeah.
And so if you can accept that people go to hell, well, that's that's almost manly. You know what I mean? Like, it's harder, and we're rewarding the hard things, the hard thoughts, the hard physical labor, whatever.
hmm
And I mean, now, wow, because
It's almost a
I've
bit of stoicism,
yeah,
a
that's
little
true.
bit of
Yeah,
stoicism, right?
yeah,
Where,
yeah. Like, you can endure. Yeah.
hmm
That's interesting to think about. I mean, I definitely find stoicism in the Bible.
hmm,
It was sprinkled here and there. It's not full on, but like, it's it comes out. And and I'm really lately just been wrestling a lot with the whole patriarchy thing. And because my trip to Chicago, I chatted with my Catholic friend, and one of the things he said to me that kind of shocked me was he said, "You know, I really think that this patriarchal system we have puts some pressure on men that I don't know that I wanted at all and never signed up for." And I was
Mm,
like, holy shit, dude, blew my mind. You know, I mean, it's true. And
mm,
part of that is like accepting hard things. Like, I don't know, maybe we could just change them, you know, let's make them better. Like, why do I have to accept the hard things? So, I don't, there's so many ways you can go with that, but it's interesting. But whenever, again, you know, whenever you're in it, it's like, well, this is just how it is. Deal with it.
yeah, if you want to be accepted, if you want to be honored, uh,
Hmm.
which is probably what I was looking for the whole time. I just wanted someone to accept and honor me, tell me I was worthy and valuable. If we boil it all
Yeah.
down to psychology, I just wanted a pat on the back.
Hey, Brian, you're, you're worthy and you're
Thank you.
valuable. Okay. Just because
Thank
you
you.
exist. That's it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I avoided therapy for years. I still haven't gone to a good one, so I'll
mhm.
be dealing with my issues for until I die probably.
Nothing wrong with that. So at least you're dealing with it, right?
Yeah,
uh,
it'd probably speed it up if I found a good therapist. But
yeah.
you're right, and I
So
appreciate that, and I think you meant that at
I
some
did
level,
mean that.
not just because it fit well in the conversation. I think you meant that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um,
I see too many people who have never been told that.
mm,
And I'm like, huh, I'm sorry. You know, and same for same for ourselves. We have to learn to tell ourselves that, like, you know, you exist, and that itself is amazing. Like if I was approaching it from like a creationist standpoint and be like, "Oh,
mm,
you think you're here by accident and
mhm.
that makes your life special?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah, it does." Like I'm
Yeah,
I'm here.
yeah,
How against all
mm,
odds of all the things. I'm here and one day I will die and within 2 generations I'll be forgotten and no one will ever know about me. So yes, this absolutely means something just that I exist. And I'm gonna like live life and enjoy it. And I realize that doesn't mean that it's boundless. Like I just can't go out and I mean I do kill as many people as I want to per day. That is true, which is zero.
me too.
You know,
Which is also
you know,
zero.
great. So, well, you know, live your truth. But but you know like you have to get to the point where you love yourself, and the thing about fundamentalism is that it is not real good at teaching you to love yourself as a person,
Mm.
you know. And then if you can't love yourself, how do you love other people in a genuine way, rather than being like the book told me to do this, you know. So
Definitely
anyway, total
wasn't.
digression. I'm so sorry that I've derailed from your story, but
No, I don't think you did.
getting into hell, it just bothers me so much because it's such an unjust punishment. You know, one of the I think I mentioned earlier to you maybe before we started about one of the YouTubers that I like to watch named Mezzo, and he debates, and he was like, "Why couldn't God have just like created another Earth that just didn't have him, and that's hell? Like it's all fine, it's all the same thing." Like if
Mm.
you were to think about it, right? Be like,
Yeah,
well, it could have just made like another place, and the rules of that, like what makes it quote unquote hell is that God just isn't there. But it has everything else. You could still live and do other things. You know, you just you just don't get access to God. Be like, oh, instead of eternal torment and weeping and gnashing of teeth and that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's like,
we're
yeah,
just on our own without any help from God,
right. You're just on your own,
which
kind of
is
like we are now.
we are now.
Yeah, you know, which honestly, not too bad. I mean, I think we can figure it out if we become more humanist and we're able to approach other people and look at each other as you know, we're all on this spinning rock, you know, working things out together. So, but yeah, hell just seems such a terrible, terrible idea from any kind of theology standpoint.
Well, it is, and but it's an infinite punishment, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the other side of, it's like negative infinity, where
Yeah.
God is positive infinity. And so in some perverted way, it creates a balance, that um, there has to be a punishment that is commensurate with the offense, that type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And it's, it's, I don't know. It's just a horrible burden to lay on people when you're talking about what do you tell your kids? And I was recollecting what I actually did tell my kids when they were coming up. And, you know, I have 4 kids, and they've all survived this.
Mm-hmm.
They've all come out of this. They've
Yeah.
all deconstructed,
All of them,
um,
huh?
all of
Usually there's
them.
a hangers on somewhere, you know.
There's not, there's not one. My wife, um, is not vocal about her belief.
Mm-hmm.
But I, if any one of the 6 of us still holds on to a belief, it would be her. But
Mm-hmm.
she's not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that's just the way she's wired. But yeah, the rest of them have managed to break out of it. And I will, you know, uh, I will always wonder how much damage I did. But I look at them where they are now,
Mm-hmm.
and they seem to be doing okay. You know,
Yeah.
in spite of it. Yeah. Um, it's
Do
tough.
you talk do you talk
Yeah.
to them about it?
Yeah, I try to. I try to, and I have several times.
Mm-hmm.
Over the past 6 years, 5 or 6 years since this happened. I guess it's relatively new, honestly. I think about the five
Yeah.
or 6 years. Um, uh, I get the feeling that they were headed that way anyway, and I just made it easier
Dude,
because
I
they
was the
did.
last one out, man. Like I realized after it was all over, I'm like, oh, because my son was asking me, because I mean, he's a nerd. He was asking me about dinosaurs, and I was deconstructing at that time, and I'm like, I don't know, just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, we'll find out later, which is always whenever
Uh,
you ran across the thing, you're like, maybe I just don't know. I'll find out later, and then like I was just like, I'm just shoving this off to the side. I don't have time to deal with this because I just don't have an answer for you, and then yeah, the other two told me later, they're like, yeah, we didn't really believe that stuff. We would go to church and it just didn't really make any sense. And I'm like, oh, and here I thought we were all in this together,
yeah.
as far as believing, so
Well, I was probably, dads are like, if you're a decent dad, dads are like kids' hero, I guess, for a while, right? When they're
for a
small,
while.
right? You're,
Yeah.
and then
Hmm.
they grow, and then you become the adversary and whatnot. But
Yeah.
I just felt like, I was their pastor, or at least one of their pastors for their entire upbringing.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, the guy who got up and spoke to them and told them all these truths, right?
Hmm.
I never sat with them at church because I was always up on the platform, but
Hmm.
I didn't even ride together to church. I got there
Yeah.
early, so. But they were, I think they believed. I baptized them all,
Yeah.
and I think they believe. But you can stop believing
You can.
is is the thing.
Do you,
And
do you have a memory of that moment when you realized I don't believe this anymore? Like all of it. Because that's a little different feeling than the other things where you're picking apart things and you're like, well, I don't believe that. And then I don't believe that. And then, I mean, for me, I was on a walk and cried. So, I mean, like
mm,
it was heavy. And, did you have anything like that where it was just a realization or like, I kind of struggled with the word, atheist. I was like,
oh
because
yeah,
I'm like, well, what do you call someone who doesn't, it's like, I felt like a moron, like afterwards when I thought about it, I'm like, well,
yeah.
of course that's what the word is, you idiot. But I was like, what is someone who doesn't believe in God? But
Is there even such a thing?
yeah, like, oh right, there's that other word. But yeah, did you have anything like that? Any moment?
I had I had a phase that I can recall, and I believe it began with a profound sadness, and I began to describe that. I'm very verbal. I talk about my feelings as they come,
Mm-hmm.
just very open. And I
I think
remember
that's good.
expressing to people that I could, and my wife, whoever would listen, that this is like losing a loved one. It's like losing a relationship. It's like somebody died,
Yes. Yeah.
right? Because sometimes you'll think, I'm going to pray, but it's the same, and you get this feeling, the same feeling you get when you think about your dead parents. You think, I want to call them.
Yeah.
No, you
Mm-hmm.
can't. They're
Nope.
not there. And you gotta go through that. And that's how it was leaving behind my faith in Jesus, because he was in my mind. Isn't the mind an amazing thing? What we can do anyway.
Yeah.
In my mind, he was listening. He was real. He was there, and I didn't need it to make sense. I just needed him to be there, I guess, for part of my Christian experience. But I believed he
Mm-hmm.
was. But the first moment I started thinking about praying or thinking about him, he wasn't there. I was like, oh, he's he's not there, and that's
Yeah.
sad, you know. And it hurt for a while. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. You said you cried. Internally I was hurting, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I remember saying, I remember letting myself off the hook. It's not my fault if I don't believe. I I can't make myself believe. It's not my fault.
Yes. Yes. I need so many people to hear this that it, like belief gets to the point that it's no longer a choice because, like, I can't choose to believe. I can't fake it. Can be like, oh, yeah, maybe Santa Claus is real. You know,
Yeah, right.
do a little wink and be like, I don't believe, but I'm going to say I believe. And that must be good enough. You just can't fake it. If you're being authentic with yourself and be like, I just don't believe it. I'm going to
And
need something more.
and that's different than this idea, which I wish sometimes I wish I could have this, but I don't think so. It's different from the idea of having a list of thresholds that once the final threshold is crossed, you're going to deny yourself belief. For instance, if I keep ticking off these uh, historical inaccuracies or uh,
Mm-hmm.
textual problems or logical inconsistencies within the scriptures and the doctrine. If I get to like 10 of these big ones, I'm turning off belief. And I can't,
Yeah.
didn't work that way for me.
No.
It's just,
And it's not uniform for everyone. Definitely, like everybody has their different things there that get them to that point. And yeah, it's not like a gauge that you're, well, if I hit 11, I'm done. So
right. And
uh,
volume doesn't go to 11, but
yeah.
that's a reference for something.
Well, it does in Spinal Tap, but yeah.
There you go. Yeah, that was I'm glad you asked that. That was helpful for me to revisit that. But I'm beyond in the whole 6 years since that time. Uh, I'm beyond feeling guilt or pain about
Mhm.
about that. I'm in the incredulity phase. I can't believe I believe that. You know.
We're gonna say the phrase. We're gonna put it out there. The angry atheist phase.
Yes.
Which uh I didn't know what that was at first. I just knew I was kind of angry because I felt like I'd been lied to my whole entire life.
Yeah.
So and maybe people would understand that. Like maybe if you can frame it in such a way where, like, hey, just imagine you believe something was true. Well, let's make it more tangible. Like you thought so and so was your dad. And it turns
Mm-hmm.
out he's not your dad. It was somebody else. And you've been
Mm-hmm.
lied to your whole life. How would you feel? He- Well, you might be like, well, he was a good dad. It's all good, but you'd still feel betrayal. You'd still feel like, why didn't somebody feel like they could tell me the truth?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, you'd get to that point where you get angry. And it is easy to be angry about this whenever people are making laws based upon something that you don't think is true at all. But they do, or maybe they don't, and they use that book to manipulate their constituents to make laws against other people or even, I mean, that would be the worst. And, anything that puts people in prison or,
Mm-hmm.
takes away from their rights is one thing. or to the small stuff, which I have a stack. Like now that I think about it, they're all around the house because my daughter works retail and people bring in stuff and just give it to her. And
Oh,
I'm like,
gospel
she
trends.
should have, yeah, yeah, she should have the right. She brought me home too last week, and I'm like, she should have the right to not be bothered at work about this. If you want to leave it on the car in the parking lot, fine. You know, because I'll do the same. But you're not going to like my tracks. But
Chick
to
chick
walk up to
tracks or atheist.
somebody, while you're checking out, and now there's this uncomfortable tension that has to be dealt with, and she's just like, I just want to ring them up and get them out to, and deal with the next customer, and yeah, it's bothersome that people feel that they can just uh, be in your face with it all the time, and then uh it's so frustrating, and so it does turn me into a little bit angry, whenever she
Yeah.
brings home stuff and makes them like, I'm so angry about this, I just want to be left alone.
Yes, I get that. I've been posting some of that on my social media. I think I'm
uh,
becoming the angry atheist. I did not want to become the angry atheist because I thought, hey, just 'cause I lost my faith doesn't mean it's not good for some people, and let them have their faith. I don't want to do anything to cause them to stumble. I don't mean that in a religious sense. I meant just cause them. I can't
sorry, it's
help it.
Christianese. There's
It's
probably a dictionary online somewhere of
yeah.
Christianese.
You can also
Don't
look that
cause a
up.
brother to stumble. Yeah. But
But and especially since I was people's pastor, and I think I see certain faces in my mind when I think about this idea that I don't want to make this person sad. They were such a sweet person,
uh,
I don't want to ruin their image or cause harm. And I guess I'm really overselling my influence here. I'm not that important to them,
I
but,
don't think
but
so. I don't think so, because you're in a position of leadership,
mhm,
and people look up to leaders. People often don't want to lead. There's an author by the name of Seth Godin. He writes a lot of
mhm,
books about marketing, and he's got one called Tribes, and he talks about
mhm,
that, about how people are looking to form tribes and find a leader, and some people are fine being told what to do. They're like, I don't
mhm,
want to lead this. So I think it's okay to feel that, and to reflect upon that. Like, you're just being compassionate to how they might feel now about that, about your change.
yeah,
But at the same time, you did say earlier that talking to atheists, you know, kind of helped eventually, and to
yeah,
use more Christianese, planting the seeds,
mm,
on
mm.
fertile ground there. And
Oh
then,
boy,
years later, like maybe even decades later, then you get to the same spot, and then you start thinking about that. And one of my earlier episodes, one of the very early ones, was a guy that was a street preacher, and he said the
mm,
same thing. Talking to atheists kind of made him think about some things, and I'm like, yeah, it's okay to poke the bear a little bit, I think, if because I wish somebody would have challenged me on some things. But whenever you're surrounded by people that are always like you,
mhm,
and you share the same, you're reading the same apologetics books, and you're watching the same videos, and you're hearing pretty much the same sermons, you're not really ever challenged outside of that. And sometimes I think that there must be like classes of kids that they tell them to go on social media and see if they can pick a fight with an atheist and see what happens in the debate space. And I'm like, I'd rather talk about it than type about it whenever it comes to that kind of stuff. But
I'm pretty sure you're right about that. I think I can imagine if anyone were to put that together, I think I know exactly who that would be, that particular
yeah.
trainee.
Hmm.
Um, I think that, I think it's, I think society is going to have to, this is what I want to say. I'm sorry. I got two things going on in mind at the same time. Was I was so involved. I was so for the cause. I was a person that was, always seeking a cause, I guess. So I found this great cause of Christianity, right? And
Hmm.
then I stepped away from that. I'm like, no more causes. I'm not carrying the banner for anyone, right? It's just me. Like,
Yeah.
but I don't know that it's in my nature, genetically or my upbringing to really not get involved in some type of cause. But that's one reason I
Hmm.
didn't want to become the angry atheist. I don't want to start preaching something else. That seems just, God,
Yeah.
the last time I did that, it didn't go well. But I see, now, and you hit on this, when people start making laws based on their beliefs that start to hurt other people, then that's a problem, and that does make me angry about that. I mean, societies can function any way they can function. They're going to find a way that works for the people in that society, and those that don't like it, they'll find another society, right? I mean, society is, we're just animals evolving, right? And I would, sure, and there's always been a place for religion, I guess, and it does provide, I think you've mentioned this before in your socials, it provides a place of community, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
necessary, right? And so you throw in a few Easter bunnies and resurrected, Middle Eastern people in there, whatever. It's just it's a community,
Yeah.
and it works until it doesn't, until
Right.
the power structure takes over. The government takes over and begins to hurt people with it. So for that
Which
reason,
happens time and time and time and time. Like so many, that's the thing that kind of bothers me. I'm like, how long are we gonna, as humans, how long is humanity gonna keep doing this? That whole adage about insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I'm like, we're just repeating the same cycle over and over again. Where the power structure of the church meets the power structure of the state, and then really bad things happen, and then it just starts all over again. And they're like, maybe we should scale it back this time. And then given enough time, it'll just repeat itself. I'm like, let's do something new.
yeah, I think it will. Can we get there? Oh gosh, I, I would hope so. I hope, given the current situation, in my best fantasy, we are witnessing the death rattle of, the old way of thinking, patriarchy, the religious right, that they're just giving it their last gasp. It's an extinction. What?
I've heard the term extinction burst. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope I would like to know that that's true. I don't know if it is. I don't know if there's data to support it. Who knows? But it sounds great, and I share that fantasy with you. Where I'm like, I'm really tired of this. I think we could all learn from different types of people, and
Mm-hmm.
I think we could all be far better as a species um, if we can all get on the same page about this stuff. But man, feels dark right now, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And I convinced myself that I was a target of persecution because of my devout Christian beliefs.
Uh-huh.
That the government was out to get me, right? Which is why I would always vote red. I was always vote
Right.
Republican. They were the ones looking out for the rights of the church. That's what
Yeah.
I believed. I wouldn't allow myself to think of anything else. I mean, I was listening to Rush Limbaugh in my 30s, right? And then I was a Fox News junkie. Um, that just came with it. But now I'll say all that not to embarrass myself, which it does embarrass me. But I say now that I'm on the other side of things, now in what was it? I guess it was 2020. I switched over to Democrat from
Yeah.
Republican. Can I say that online? I guess
You can. I mean, it's questionable whether or not that's any better some days.
Yeah, well, it's just suffice to
but
say I switched parties.
yeah,
Maybe a
yeah,
Democrat, maybe it wasn't. Who knows, right? We'll have to
yeah.
see. We'll find out in 2 weeks.
Right.
But yeah. So I switched, and now I said, well, crap. Now I'm in crosshairs again. Now I'm worried that I'm going to become targeted because I'm on the other side. My
Yeah.
time has not been good.
Your time is
Obviously.
terrible. Yeah. So, well, I mean, all I hear is evolution. All I hear is growth, and just I am. I've had this thought recently that I kind of feel that getting to a point of unbelief is part of the evolutionary process. We always think about the physical aspects of evolution, and not that I'm an expert on evolution, because again, that was, yeah, I'm catching up. But mentally, we've evolved over time, and we know that just because, our capabilities to do things, the things that we've learned and then adapted and tested and tried and failed and all that kind of stuff, it all gets wrapped in there. And I don't know, I kind of feel like unbelief might be part of that as well. Again, I'm a Star Trek junkie, so
Me too.
whenever they, whenever there's things that I'm catching in rewatches of shows that I can't believe that I missed it whenever I was a Christian and like, oh, they were trying to tell us stuff, right? But
I would pick
I
up on
just think,
those things and get offended when I was.
yeah, 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 maybe you would get offended and be like, oh, that's not right. But I like this
Mhm.
show, so I'll just look the other way for this episode. But,
Yeah.
um, but I think it's just part of growth and just part of the evolutionary process to get us to where we can be less divided and more united, and then really to treat each other's as equals and humans, because I'm no better than anybody else and nobody's any better than me. Well, I mean, maybe on some physical aspects, but other people are better than I am. But as far as like our worth as people, you know there might be a couple of people that are really, really low on that. I could give them that, but I could
It
also
depends on what we're
argue that they're
grading.
broken. Yeah, it
Yeah.
depends on what we're grading. Yeah, but I might argue that they're horribly broken, and we need to find a way to fix them.
You know, this is hard for me because I spent all my adult life and my childhood believing that there was a grand purpose, an arc, if you
Hmm.
will, justice, whatever, and that there was eternity ahead of us, and all the good stuff was eventually going to come, going to happen. All the perfect stuff was coming.
Hmm.
Switching over to atheism, you have to rethink that. I'm not one day closer to heaven. I'm got one day less on my clock. you know, and that's all that means. It's a
Yeah,
subtraction, and
yeah,
I've there's nothing beyond this. And that was weird for me, but it wasn't devastating. I just knew I had to start living in that reality.
yeah.
But it was weird, which takes me to ideas like, are we destined for anything great as a society? There's no destiny. There's just the trajectory that we are on, and things happen to we have inflection points.
Hmm.
There's no predefined goal. There's no guarantee that more people are going to be happy than are unhappy at the moment. Um, it's it's what we make of it now is where I'm
Yeah.
at philosophically,
Okay.
right? And
Yeah.
I want my kids to have a better tomorrow, and I want their kids to have a better tomorrow. I can't really go beyond grandkids. I can't think that far, or great grandkids.
Yeah.
But we're just living. We're going. We're living our time. I want people to be happy. I don't want to hurt people. I want people to experience joy in their life because God knows it's hard. Not well, God does know, but God's not real. But if He were real, He would know, and that life is hard. And let's let people have a good experience of this life. And that's what I want for
Mhm.
people, and that's what I think would be good. Um, what can I do to contribute to that for other people? I guess that's
Mhm.
my philosophy now. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I would want for other people what I want for myself, and I want good things. I don't. I prefer not a life of suffering. If I had my choices between what would you rather have, a nice life or a terrible one. Well, okay, I guess I'm going to go with the nice life, and I want that for other people because I want it for myself. I think that's called empathy, which I hear is now a sin. So,
It
yeah,
is a sin.
that's a whole. I don't know what's wrong with the world. Whenever a certain subset of Christians started calling empathy a sin, I'm like, man, you guys have lost the plot. Like,
So
what is going on?
I don't understand that either. But I wonder. There's the survival of the fittest theory, right, of Darwinianism, which I've always
Uh-huh.
rejected. But my my tiny understanding of it is that those that had developed habits and ideas that would prolong their life ended up dominating the species because they just live longer, right? And those and whatever traits they had genetically, they multiplied and they increased throughout their uh, children and
Uh-huh.
progeny. So the strong survive. So it makes me wonder: is empathy a strong trait? And I don't know if I'm known about evolution to comment on this, but I would like to think that empathy, compassion, concern for others is a trait that will dominate the species. I do think a lot of it. I think, because I don't have a clue really scientifically, but I can imagine a lot of that narcissism and stuff may be genetic, or at least picked up, by nurturing,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Is there
Yeah.
any
It kind
hope?
of makes you wonder about the less desirable traits. Like, where did those come from? Why do we act this way? And I don't have a good answer for it. And I'm okay with that. I can just know that I'm trying to treat other people with respect, you know, and and try to not do harm.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
yeah, yeah. Me too. I used to think that religion, Christianity in particular, was the best way uh, to live out those ideals. Um, for some reason, I just had a blind eye to all the things that were antithetical to that. And now I'm no longer blind to those things. I no longer think
Yeah.
Christianity is the best way to get to those things, nor do I even believe that is true. Um,
Hmm.
and so, yeah, that's where we are. That's where I am.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap this up. Tell me where you're at today, and what do you see for the future? Just living your life.
Yeah. So I'm in my late 50s now. Gosh, hard to say that. With the career change at 50 was kind of tough. Now I work as a control systems engineer. Um,
Hmm.
been doing that for 5 or 6 years now. A professional engineer. I was able to get my license last year, so that's opened up some opportunity for me to work and provide. But I also feel like I'm coming towards the end of my desire to work for anyone. I am tired of working. I'm working on a Sunday, and I'm tired of working. And
Yeah.
I want to live out the rest of my days. I just found out that I'm going to be a grandfather the
Oh,
first time.
congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
excited
awesome.
about that.
Wow.
Um, maybe in about 4 years I can, stop coming into the office and try to enjoy some type of retirement. And
Uh-huh.
in 4 years from now, who knows if I may become that, very vocal uh, spokesperson you know, for non-religious belief.
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
that's not.
And you don't even have to feel pressured to do that. You could just be like, well, I'm the listening ear, and I'm
Mm,
I'm the guy that'll love on you. That's
mm,
needed and necessary as well. So not we all are finding our place and finding what intrigues us. And me, I like having discussions with people. I love to hear their stories, and then because I get something out of it as well. I mean, maybe it's all selfish, right? Maybe I'm just doing this because, I hear little things that, you've said and other people have said, and it's just wonderful to me, to look at this journey about how so many people can come from so wildly different backgrounds and then kind of like gravitate toward more of a single mindedness of like, well, at least with this, we're all pretty much in agreement that we don't agree with that. We can debate other things about like, well, what's the best way to do an economy, or how should we deal with things like, I don't know, health mandates and things of that nature. Those are all up for debate. Um, but it is kind of nice to not have to worry about, am I following all the right rules,
mm,
and am I are my is my interpretation of this, belief system right versus everybody else's down the street, and all their different
mm,
it's nice because as I've heard it said, I'm going to have to reference Mezzo again. He said, it really just kind of like makes the Rubik's cube like work,
mm,
like it makes all the puzzle pieces go away. And then you're just like, oh, yeah, I don't have to like jump through hoops to make things uh,
mm.
justified in my head anymore. you know, and which then, whenever you put that out aside, then you can focus on your humanity and focus on others. And yeah, you don't have to be an atheist street preacher. I probably would be. I've thought about it. I've thought about like that it would be funny as a joke to stand on a corner and just tell people you're fine. But but I would have to get like a bullhorn and be like, everything's gonna be okay, you know.
That's that's
you know,
fantastic.
you know.
I love that. Oh my
So,
God.
but you know, maybe you're just the guy that gets involved in his community and also ends up being like a great dad and a great husband and a great grandpa. You know,
Not a great
that'll
grandpa,
be
but a
well,
good.
you know, great comma whatever. Yeah,
I'm
you know,
sorry.
a supportive grandpa. How about that? So
Yeah.
you know, I mean, because I think one of the things that you kind of touched on is that like you know there's this idea that only God can give purpose, you know,
Mm,
and meaning, and then you know you're gonna get another chance to be involved in a young child's life very intimately and guide them and teach them some things and love on them. And I think that that is a great gift to give to the world because man, how much of this if there's anything I've learned, it's that one thing, we're all going to deal with our childhood forever. So that's
mm,
just so, you know,
mm,
help the grandkid have a really great childhood, you know.
mm.
So that way, you know, maybe things will you know, be
Yeah,
even better in adulthood, you know, and
right.
then you have a new purpose and a new meaning. So nothing but good stuff there.
That's good. That's a very good framing. I appreciate that. Um, and so,
I got it off a fortune cookie. So I'm, you know, I'm really using those fortune cookie sayings. No, I didn't really, but but
yeah, it's a
yeah,
little too
no,
long for a
that
fortune
no,
cookie.
that really is my thought. Is that you know, you don't have to be super vocal. You can just be a good person.
I can be a good person, and I'm very
Mhm.
happy with that. I'm very glad to be out of
Yeah,
um, what a faith structure.
yeah,
I'm very pleased with that. So,
yeah. Okay.
uh,
Well, I appreciate you so much for joining me and telling this story. And you know, I kind of laughed a couple of times because you mentioned about you've bounced back and forth between preaching and then this, you know, this engineering path you're on, back and forth, back. And now you're settled in, right? And now you're tired of working, which I think we all are, you know. But, you know, you settled in on something and you got to make that choice, you know. And
right.
I that's what I really like. And so, you know, I give yourself a pat on the back, you know, reward yourself with a Chicago dog today, you know? I mean, I
I
think
will.
that's, you know, I think that's what you should do.
I'll take your advice.
All
And
right.
thanks, Gene. I'm so glad I met you online and now
Yeah.
virtually. So
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll keep this conversation going for sure.
let's do it. Okay. Take care.